from a cabin deep in the Tennessee woods. Yeah, that's not right. We're supposed to be in the creepy swamp. Anyway, I welcome you to Fave Five From Fans, the podcast where I, Jamie Ray, your humble host, invite a friend of mine to create a list of 5 of their favorite things that we have a shared interest in, be it movies, books, TVs, toys, or really whatever. Our own unique Venn diagram of topics near and dear to our hearts. We then sit down across from each other to compare and contrast, dissect and disseminate our choices to you, the listening audience. We'll start off with honorable mentions, those selections that didn't quite make the Fave Five for good reasons or bad. And then we'll take turns unveiling our choices backwards from 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. You'll hear us discussing everything from alien invasions to bear attacks, hope not, Rom the Space Knight, musical numbers, Edgar Allan Poe to Stephen King, both literature and adaptations. All that's left is for you to decide who's right, who's wrong, and will we still be friends after all this. I can't wait to get started. So please sit back, strap in, and get ready for this episode of Fave Five From Fans. Greetings and felicitations, podcast universe. So thrilled to be bringing you another episode of Fave Five From Fans from location. That's right. Your host, Jamie Ray, is on vacation in the deep woods of Tennessee. And I am so excited to be sitting in a nice sunroom looking out on the mountains of Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, while I talk to today's guest from the Wastes, Evan Carter, as we discuss our Fave 5 Outer Limit episodes from the classic 60s series.
There is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission. If we wish to make it louder, we will bring up the volume. If we wish to make it softer, we will tune it to a whisper. We will control the horizontal. We will control the vertical. We can roll the image, make it flutter. We can change the focus to a soft blur or sharpen it to crystal clarity. For the next hour, sit quietly and we will control all that you see and hear. We repeat, there is nothing wrong with your television set. You are about to participate in a great adventure. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the inner mind to the outer limits.
Evan, welcome to the show.
Hi, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful, sir. I've spent our first night here at the cabin, no bear attacks, and the park ranger told us to make sure to lock our doors because bears can open car doors now. And here I only thought they worried about stealing picnic baskets.
Hey, boo-boo, let's see what we got in this picnic basket.
How are things there in the Wastes?
Oh, not too bad. I'm glad that you're sitting in your sunroom with a nice view of is it Pigeon Forge Mountains?
It is Pigeon Forge Mountains behind us.
Pigeon Forge Mountains. I'm here in a bunker staring at concrete walls. So, but I'm gonna paint a mural of some mountains onto the wall, and
and make sure to put a black bear because they're everywhere.
Yes.
So, Evan, thank you for joining us. We are going to be talking about the Outer Limit television episodes from the 60s, from the original series. And please tell us why you are the best guest for us to discuss this with.
I'm probably not the best guest.
Yes, you are. Don't argue with me. I'm the host.
But I will say that I love The Outer Limits. And I didn't get to see The Outer Limits for a much later than I got to see Twilight Zone. You know, because you kind of got the Outer Limits and the Twilight Zone, and they're, both anthology series and they're older and black and white and, moral tales. But the Outer Limits always seemed, I don't know if it was, I've always tried to figure out exactly what the difference was between the two.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still not really sure what it is. I think Outer Limits are a little bit darker, maybe.
I agree. I think it also has a little more of the science to it.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, I love the series. But I also love older black and white style television shows and movies. And I have watched have there been one or two
There has been at least
kind of reboots.
Yeah,
at least 2 reboots.
At least 2 reboots.
Yeah,
and some of those are good too. I enjoyed, say that one with Alyssa Milano. That one was pretty interesting, where the little sphere meteorite crashes through and it turns her into a sex-starved succubus that goes around literally pulling guys into her body.
Yeah.
That one was creepy. And then, of course, you've got Adam Nimoy directing his dad in the episode of I, Robot. Also very good.
Yeah, I remember that one.
But we are talking about the classic black and whites. And as some of you may know from watching the show, it always would start out with the control voice. It really sets the mood for you to know that, okay, I'm in now for something that's not quite normal.
Right.
And there were a lot of good episodes. It started in 63 and ran to 65. It's 2 seasons, but there's a lot of episodes in the first season, like 32 maybe?
Yeah.
And then there were 17 in the second. So really, if you put it together, there's like 3 seasons worth of normal television.
Right.
But they only have it 2. So what do you think about when you think about The Outer Limits? Do you have any memories of watching it in syndication, or did you just get it on VHS or DVD?
Yeah, I never had the chance to watch it in syndication. I kind of missed out on all of that when I was growing up. We only had the 2 channels on TV, and we didn't have cable. I wouldn't see anything on cable until mid late 80s, like 89. Yeah. And that was only if I went into the day room when I was in the service to watch, whatever.
Oh yeah. You have a very interesting childhood. you worked a long hours on a farm, right?
Yeah. It sucked. I'm not gonna lie, it sucked.
I heard your story on our SIP Network brother Andrew's show before.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I was that's Dead Hand Radio. If you're out there, listen to it, subscribe. But yeah, very very interesting story, man. I felt a lot off of that from you. I really
thank
did.
you.
Yeah.
Well, and what I would do is I would find like books and magazines and stuff like, episode guides, and I would read about all of these movies and television shows, but I wouldn't get to see them until I got off on my own, and then I would pick them up on VHS tape, and usually, those VHS tapes, you would have 1 or maybe 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Per tape. And so I would never have the complete collection. I would just get, 1 here and 1 there. And it wouldn't be, I don't even remember, until I was able to finally sit down and watch the entire run of each season. I was probably well in my 30s, I think.
Yeah. But obviously it stuck with you because.
Oh yeah. And I remember being interested in it as a kid, because I would see in these books that I would get, these, talking about science fiction and the science in science fiction, and talking about this show, The Outer Limits, and talking about the different episodes, and thinking one day oh my God, I have to see this. I have to watch this. Yeah.
I'm with you. Well, great. Well, I'd like you quickly, if you would, tell us a little bit about From the Wastes and what you're doing now with Trek Talk.
I run From the Wastes, and it's basically I curate post-apocalyptic and dystopian fiction in the form of books and movies and TV shows. And just in a nutshell, I find things that I like and I dispense it upon the void. And I have a podcast now. Mm-hmm. I've actually had a podcast. This is my 3rd year. I only have 11 episodes, I believe, but I put out episodes as I am motivated to do so when I find something I want to talk about or someone that I want to talk to. And so so there are many. I'm on Tumblr, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on, like I said, I have a podcast. I'm kind of everywhere out there. If you search for From the Waste, you're going to find me. And I have a blog, From the Waste, but I also have a blog called The Last Librarian, which basically I took about a year or so and took screenshots of my library, of all the books in my library, front cover, back cover, little details as to when it was published and all that.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a virtual library. If someone would ever want to go there and on a lazy Sunday afternoon or whatever, and just kind of scroll through and look. And it's all books, 60s, 70s, 80s, up through, the early 2000s.
Cool. Yeah, I've looked at that several times, as a matter of fact, on Tumblr. We follow each other, and got some cool stuff, and actually have some books that I have too. So that's always makes it pretty neat.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, and then Trek Talk.
Oh,
yes. Don't forget about Trek Talk.
Yeah, our friend Phantom Dark Dave. Used to run this thing called Trek Talk, where a group of us.
And what show was that on?
It was on Dave's Pop Culture Podcast.
No.
Yeah.
It was on Dave's Pop Culture Podcast.
That's right.
Dave would so spank you if you said that wrong.
I know.
Shout out to Dave. I just talked to him a minute ago.
And so he ended that particular podcast, and I was brokenhearted and begged and pleaded if I could carry on the mantle of Trek Talk. And although we've only put out one episode, we're not putting out as many episodes as he did. But he now has his new podcast, Podcast from Another World. So
which comes on. You can find it on the Terrible Terror podcast.
Right, who is part of the SIP Network Brotherhood.
That's right. Yeah, and it's a great show. And I am holding out. I'm waiting one day to get my invitation when you guys do Yesterday's Enterprise from Next Gen.
Okay.
I'd love to be there.
Okay, I am going to write that down.
That's my all-time favorite, which I shouldn't be saying because I have a Fave 5 Star Trek episodes coming up. But there you go, spoiler alert.
Sounds like a plan.
Awesome. Well, great. I think if we've got all the formalities out of the way, that we can start off with, I believe you have one honorable mention, right?
Correct. Yep, I have one honorable mention. And it was difficult for me to choose between this honorable mention and another one that ended up on the list.
Huh?
But my honorable mention is Soldier.
Night comes too soon on the battlefield. For some men it comes permanently, their eyes never open to the light of day. But for this man, fighting this war, there is never total darkness. The spidery beams of light in the sky are the descendants of the modern laser beam. Heat rays that sear through tungsten steel and flesh as though they were cheesecloth. And this soldier must go against those weapons. His name is Quarlo, and he is a foot soldier, the ultimate infantryman.
Oh, wow. You and I are going to have a problem.
And see, that was one of the reasons I did it, because I didn't want my list to be exactly the same as yours. So, yeah. So I'm going to tell you, Soldier barely made it as an honorable mention.
Oh, you are so glad you're in that bunker right now. Soldier is actually my number one choice. Yeah, you better make that face.
Oh, yeah. Oh, throw down.
So I'm going to let you briefly talk about why you're wrong. I mean, why you chose this as your honorable mention. And then we're going to wait till I get to number one to tell you why it is the best episode. Oh, I shouldn't use the B word.
That's right.
That's right, because this is your favorites. No, but go ahead. Tell us why you chose Soldier.
I mean, there are a lot of good things about it. You know, I like that the actor that played the soldier, and forgive me, I can't remember his name.
Michael Ansara.
He was on the original Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, correct?
And the original Star Trek.
And the original
Star Trek. Deep Space Nine.
Correct. I'm going to go ahead and let you talk about the big kerfuffle that happened with.
Oh, yeah, I'll talk about that when we get to the top.
That may come up with another one of my episodes as well. So
maybe mine too.
I don't know. It was just a gut feeling, and I don't know. It's hard to explain. I'm not sure why. I'm really anxious to hear why it's in your list.
And it's a sleeper of mine too. Well. So when we get to it, yeah. Okay. All right. So let me ask you this. What about it kept it from being an actual number? Was there something that didn't sit right with you?
It wasn't one of the first episodes that popped into my head. I had when you asked me to do this, I had at least 3, maybe it was 4 episodes that just, oh yeah, this one, and this one. These are the ones I always like watching. Right. And I didn't even think about Soldier.
Oh, interesting.
And I guess if I didn't think about it immediately, then why would I include it?
Makes sense.
Five.
Okay.
Now I'm questioning myself, and I'm wondering if I should just redo the whole thing.
Well, that's what I'm all about. I make you question your decisions. No, but seriously, that's the great thing about the show is it is about favorites. And that's something that you like for a reason, I may not like it for a different reason or for the same reason. So, all in all. Okay, well then, I've got 2 honorable mentions. So out of the 49 episodes, I have a total of 7 that are on my list. Okay. Mm-hmm. I have to honestly say that my honorable mention number 2 is on this list, not because it's a great story, not because it's incredibly well acted, but because it's got a really cool title and it was a lot of fun. So I'm talking about the season 2, episode 3, Behold Ek, which was originally premiered October 3rd, 1964. And it's about a 2-dimensional alien who ends up crossing over into our 3rd dimension. And the only way to see this guy is with a special set of glasses that our Dr. Robert Stone, an absent-minded optic engineer, brilliant researcher in the field, has made from this material from like a comet or an asteroid that crashed on. And so he's made a series of these glasses, not knowing they have this special ability. And he's given them out to 3 or 4 different people just in the normal course of his ophthalmological work. And one by one, these people are dying in these incredibly horrific ways. And the police think that the doctor's doing it. And so while the doctor is in his studies trying to figure something out, this alien, who they call Ek, shows up. And they're able to come together and decide that Ek is not intentionally harmful and he's only trying to get back to his dimension. But when the police find out about him and then all of this stuff goes together, it causes havoc where I believe a whole floor of a building is attacked or wiped out because of the breaking of that 3rd dimension. But in the end, it was really cool because Ek is able to cross back over with the help of the doctor and the doctor's assistant who really, really loves him. And it's a happy ending at the end. So I just really enjoyed it because I thought that the episode didn't take itself too seriously. And also for the optics of the Ek creature, which was basically, do you remember this episode?
I think so. Is that the one where it's like the creature is kind of like just an outline?
Squiggly lines, outline.
Yes. Yeah.
That's him. And it's got this really cool voice. He's voiced by a guy named Robert Johnson. But yeah, so it's, I don't want to call it a forgettable episode, but there's not a lot to make you go, oh, wow, that's amazing. But I really enjoyed it.
That's what it's
about.
So
I thought it would be here on number 3. So not much to talk about there, just the fact that I really thought that was a fun little episode. Now, my other honorable mention is on here for 2 reasons. First off, because it has an incredibly young, mustacheless Dabney Coleman. And because its title has been reused in the Star Trek universe over and over and over again. And when I first saw it on there, I was like, holy crap. And I'm talking about season 2, episode 8, Wolf 359. And you know what Wolf 359 is in Next Gen, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. It's where the Battle of the Borg took place when they season 3. And so basically this episode is about Patrick O'Neill, who plays a guy named Jonathan Meredith, who has been tasked to create a miniature planet based off of the information that they find on a real planet in the Wolf 359 system or designation. And because it's so small and miniaturized, the accelerated development of the planet allows them to look through this special microscope and see what our world would have been like had we been able to view it. And when you're not looking, we, the viewer, see this really creepy looking, almost frighteners type spirit coming out of the planet toward us. And I thought it was a really cool episode. As the planet develops, this spirit, which we understand is a malevolent, almost being that is coming into our world. And the doctor, in normal crazed doctor fashion, sends everybody away, and he's only able to be saved at the very last minute when his Dabney Coleman assistant and his wife come back and they destroy it. And then, we get the control voice telling us that there is a theory that Earth and sun and galaxy and all known universe are only a dust mote on some policeman's uniform in some gigantic superworld. Could we be under some super microscope right now? And it ends. And I just thought that was a cool little episode,
Well, I miss this kind of stuff, these anthology series.
Right.
I mean, we've got Black Mirror and we've got all these different, but, and I haven't seen the new Twilight Zone at all. I don't know what it's like.
No, me either.
But boy, I miss this old Outer Limits. And man.
Did you ever see Masters of Science Fiction?
Oh gosh, that sounds familiar.
Well, there was a whole series called Masters of Horror, where they had all these famous directors and writers come back in and do stories. And it went, I think, 2 seasons, and it went so well that they did a science fiction. But I've never heard anybody talk about any of the episodes. So I don't know if it was good or I'm just wondering, maybe you'd seen it.
Boy, that doesn't ring a bell. I mean, I remember, Ray Bradbury's Theater and
Which you can catch on Pluto TV.
Like yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I was watching that on Prime, maybe.
Yeah. Some good stuff. Well, okay. So those are my 2 honorable mentions.
Okay.
I think if we're ready, let's get with your number 5.
My number 5 is Don't Open Until Doomsday.
Oh, that was such a creepy episode.
Yes. Basically what happens is there's this freshly married man and woman, and they get this box. And there's a label on it that says "Don't open until Doomsday." And all of a sudden, the groom gets zapped and he's gone.
And this is like in the 20s or so, right?
Yeah, it's like late 20s, I think.
And it's literally their wedding day, because it's like a big table full of wedding gifts or something. Yeah,
they're like fresh off the altar. And then we go to, all of a sudden, it's like 1964. And this couple that are eloping end up at this house where this old lady is. And come to find out, this old lady, this creepy weird old lady,
wearing like the flapper outfit and stuff.
Right.
I mean, as my grandfather would say, that lady just ain't right.
Yeah. Well, she ends up she was the bride, and she's been living here, and she has been I guess luring people into the house to get zapped by this box thing, to try to see if she can exchange them for her groom.
Right, because there's something in the box, right?
Right, yeah. There's
an alien, a big one-eyed alien or something.
Yeah, and it's like another dimension. It's like a little pocket dimension thing. And so the bride ends up getting zapped into this box.
The young bride.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And I'm trying to remember what happened to
her dad's like some well-to-do guy, right? And so
her dad shows up.
Yeah, looking for her.
Yeah. And he gets zapped into the box, doesn't he?
I believe you're right.
And while they're in the box, there's also the original groom, the crazy old lady's husband.
Right.
Yeah, this creature that lives in there apparently has become lost between dimensions somehow, and his goal is reuniting with his other friends or companions or whatever they are. But if they end up coming together, it's going to result in the complete annihilation of our universe. And
do you get the feeling that kind of happened at the beginning of 2020 and we just don't know it yet?
Yeah. We're all, oh God.
That damn alien.
We will never forget 2020.
Never.
But
that's a great episode. So at the end, the dad, he somehow works it out where the groom can get out, right? And his daughter, and he stays. I think they don't they like fight. He and the alien fights,
Yeah, so something happens, and the daughter, the current bride, is set free, and whatever this alien does ends up kind of uncreating himself or something, and the mansion just blows up, or
yeah, I think you're right. Like it sucks itself in or something.
Yeah.
And that dad, if I'm not mistaken, that dad was John Hoyt,
Yes.
who was in When Worlds Collide.
Yes.
In Spartacus. I recognized him, not knowing where I knew him from, but I recognized him right away. I thought it was Tim O'Connor from Buck Rogers. But
boy, When Worlds Collide, that was a great movie.
Oh, great movie. Yeah. It's almost a post-apocalyptic film.
Yeah. And well, there was a book of it.
Oh yeah.
The movie was based on the book, or maybe it was vice versa. I can't remember. Anyway, there was a sequel book.
Oh wow.
Called, I believe, After Worlds Collide. I have it up on the shelf, and It talks about the planet that the spaceship gets to, and that's where the story takes off. Is them coming to the new planet and all this stuff. And there was an ancient civilization, and yeah, it's pretty cool.
Oh, cool. Well, great. Well, that's a great number 5. My number 5 is a really cool, dark episode called The Architects of Fear. And this was the 3rd episode released September 30th, 1963 from season 1. And it stars Robert Culp as a man named Alan Leighton. And so this is set in that period, right in the middle of the Cold War, where everybody's ramped up and amped up about what's going to happen, and are the Ruskies going to shoot missiles toward us, and back and forth. So this group, this cabal of scientists, basically pull strings, and they choose one of their own. And in this case, it's Alan Leighton, played by Robert Culp. And they have been studying a far planet called Phaeton. And they have decided what they're going to do is they're going to take Alan Leighton and change him into an alien from that planet. And they've made a spaceship that's going to come in, and I say crash, but it's going to come in and it will basically land in front of the UN and come out, and it'll change everyone's mentality from worrying about fighting about each other to now worrying about an external enemy, and basically bring the world together. And the fly in the ointment is the fact that Dr. Leighton is married to Yvette, and they are in love. And he can't tell her what's going to happen. So they basically fake his death. But she's smart enough to know something's not right. And so they're keeping her away. Okay, he's dead. There's no reason for you to be around here anymore. While they're doing all of these amazingly interesting and intricate, wild modifications to his body, so that when you find his body, it is an alien body, not just a human. And everything's set to go. And at the very end, just like everything else, simple mechanical failure causes the spaceship to crash land in a wooded area instead. And as Alan comes out as a monster, some duck hunters shoot him. And he's wounded and has to make himself up, and gets back to the Institute just in time for his wife to show up. She doesn't know. She just sees an alien, but he does a little hand signal that they used to have between each other. And she realizes it's him, and then he dies. And I thought it was really kind of a very cool episode. Not just the thought behind what it would take to have pulled us out of that brink of war, but also the fact that one man is going to sacrifice not just his life, but his life as well to benefit the world. And how it all comes down in the end to 3 guys with shotguns that end up making it all go wrong. So have you seen this episode?
I have. Don't really remember it all that much. I remember, I sure like that title, though.
I know, right?
But yeah, I don't rightly remember this episode, even with you describing it.
Yeah, it's a great one.
Must not be one of my favorites.
No, it must not. It's got great makeup and great creature effects on it.
Yeah.
Especially even in the black and white, it stands out.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed it. So, so that means your number 4's got to be better than that one.
I don't know if any of mine are better than my number 4 is The Man with the Power.
Okay.
And you'll have to forgive me. I didn't write down his name. He's one of my favorite actors. Okay, Donald Pleasance is the main guy. And, he's kind of I love these episodes where you have the little kind of meek, mild, kind of milquetoasty dude. He's just this, he's this college professor, Harold Finley. And he creates this device that when you put it in your brain, it makes it so that you can manipulate objects through mind power, telekinesis.
Okay.
And he's disregarded as talentless and by everybody, his family, his co-workers, and everybody. But he ends up making an impact with the NASA or U.S. Space Agency, whatever it was called, in the hopes that he can help them in retrieving these unreachable asteroids that are rich in different minerals and all that sort of thing. And as he starts getting used to this device and learning how to use it, he ends up finding out that like his subconscious mind has been taking revenge on those that have wronged him, including his wife. And
Carol Baskin, was that her name?
Right. I think so. And he ends up almost killing her. And because what would happen was, I remember this one scene where he's driving down the road and these, I think they're tree cutters or something, or they're clearing the road, or they're doing something. They're road workers working on the road, and he wants to get by. And I distinctly remember there was totally room for him to get by. But, this is the scene. So he can't get by, and they give him a hard time. And I think, he ends up having to turn back around and drive like another 3 miles to go down another road or something like that.
Oh.
So he's now out of scene, and all of a sudden these guys are working on the road, and this big giant, and they use the same effects like in all episodes. They'll have like a cloud, and then it'll be like a negative. How it'll be. The black and white will
be Tales from the Dark Side,
right? And then the little lightning bolts and the sparkles and the crackles and all that sort of thing. And so you see this happening to someone wrongs him, and then he's gone. And then all of a sudden you see this thing happen to the people that wronged him. Well, what ends up happening is the space agency is going to use this device and transplant it into an astronaut. They're not going to use him to go do the asteroid thing. They're gonna just use the device, put it in an astronaut, and have that astronaut go do it. But he has since found out that what's going on, that his subconscious brain is whacking people left and right, and he knows that that's not a good thing. And so they're getting the operation going, and he goes into the operating room and just basically destroys everything. And that's pretty much the end of the episode. Sacrifices himself, to make sure that this doesn't happen. And I really like these episodes, like I explained before, where you have the guy who is always picked on. He's always everyone. He's the victim of bullies and all this sort of thing, and he ends up with some kind of power and ends up exacting revenge, and it's never worth it in the end.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and watch that one. I like me some Donald Pleasance. So.
Yeah, he's just awesome in everything he does.
Oh, everything. Well, that's a cool one. I like that one. I'll have to go back and watch it. So my number 4 is another season 1 episode, episode 11, and it's got the coolest title. It Crawls Out of the Woodwork. Have you seen this one?
Man, that is not ringing a bell.
Man, so the episode starts with this maid vacuuming in what obviously is like a big scientific lab. And there's this dust bunny. You remember it?
Yeah, I do.
And so she's like vacuuming it up, and then all of a sudden, everything happens. Lightning clouds.
Yep.
And so basically you jump forward 6 months later, and Michael Forrest from Star Trek, Apollo, if I'm not mistaken, and his older brother Scott. Michael Forrest plays Stuart Peters, and Scott Marlowe plays Jory Peters. And they have traveled across the country because Jory is going to get a new job at this facility called Norco, which is a Southern California physics research group center. But when they get there, they're a day early, and the guard is like, well, you come back tomorrow when it's time. And he goes and shakes the guy's hand, and he palms him a matchbook. And so as they drive off, they open it up, and in it is scrawled, "Don't come back, Norco Doom." And they're like, what the heck is this? And so when the next day, when Professor Peters shows up, he tells the head scientist, Dr. Block, hey, one of your guys gave me this yesterday. Is there something going on that I should know about? Basically, they just put it off as, that guy's a joker, or I don't know, we'll talk to him and find out. And then the guys, you never see him again. He's gone. And they get introduced to another scientist, a female scientist, played by Joan Camden. And she takes him and corrals him into this pit where the creature that we saw at the very beginning has now grown exponentially and is saved in this pit. And it causes him basically to die. He has like a heart attack. And Michael Forst's character is trying to figure out where his brother is. He's calling. They tell him he's off site. And he meets up with a young lady played by Barbara Luna, another Star Trek alum. So when he's like called the police, something's going on. My brother's not, they've done something with my brother. And the Sergeant Sorello shows up, played by very young Ed Asner. And as they're trying to decide what had happened, I think I may be getting this slightly out of order, but the brother shows back up, and he's wearing this thing under his jacket that looks like a big transistor radio. And he accidentally falls into a tub, and it short circuits and kills him again. Anyway, long story, long episode, very convoluted. You find out that Dr. Block has been using the creature to kill people and then puts what basically is a pacemaker back into them. And now he has slaves that have to work. And what they're doing is they're trying to break the law that says energy is never lost, matter is never lost, it's only converted into it. So they're trying to figure out a way to create energy for this creature to live on. Mm-hmm. And it kind of goes awry. The creature gets out, and they figure out a way to get the creature back in. Ed Asner shows up. All these, it's very cool, very well acted episode. And it ends with them basically getting the monster back in, contained for now. And it just kind of leaves it hanging, Yeah. So really, really cool episode. A lot of good stars. I really like the way that they packed so much stuff into this episode. There was hardly any downtime at all.
Wow.
Do you remember this one?
All I'm remembering is the vacuuming and the dust bunny thing. That's the only thing I can remember. The dust
bunny from another dimension.
Yeah. Oh, man. I feel terrible that I'm not remembering some of this stuff.
No, you shouldn't. But what you should remember is your number 3.
Yeah, and these top 3, I had a terrible time getting, 3, 2, 1 in rank, because to be perfectly honest, they're all interchangeable. Right. Any one of these could be my top one. And so I just kind of, as best
close
as
your
I
eyes
could,
and point.
Yeah, kind of. I just, okay. Because I would imagine that my number 3 is going to be the number 1 probably for a lot of folks.
Okay.
Apparently, except you.
Yes, but, and I think I know the one you're going to say, but
yeah.
Let's see if I'm right. I'm gonna crest it.
My number 3, Demon with a Glass Hand.
God, that's my number 2. That's my number 2.
It could easily be my number 2 as well.
Yeah, that's a great episode.
Oh,
doesn't get enough love.
Yeah, and we got Robert Culp again. Robert Culp is another one of those. Just you could watch him in anything.
Right, and the other. Well, let's go ahead. Why don't you go ahead, because it's my number 2, so I feel comfortable about talking about it now. So why don't you give us your quick synopsis of what's in there and who the other Star Trek alum is in that episode?
Oh gosh, that I might not remember. You're way more. I am not an encyclopedia of Star Trek knowledge. I got to tell you off the bat right now. I love Star Trek. I just don't know everything about it.
So you remember Consuela, who's working in the shop that he ends up meeting and spends?
Yeah.
Okay, that's Arlene Martell from Mirror Mirror episode. Kirk's woman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, go ahead. Tell us about this episode.
So basically, we have Trent, Robert Culp, is this guy who has no memory of his life before the previous 10 days. Right. No idea. And his left hand has been replaced with basically kind of this robotic glass or crystal hand.
It's just consistently giving us the hang 10.
I know, yeah. The middle 3 fingers, everything but his thumb and his pinky are gone. They're missing. And this hand tells him that he needs to find his fingers before it can tell him what's going on. And Trent is being hunted by these aliens called the Kybin, who have the missing fingers. He's being hunted by these aliens. Basically, what happens is this one of these aliens, a Kybin, tells Trent that they're both from 1,000 years in the future, and the Earth has been conquered, has been taken over by the Kaiban. But all the surviving humans, except for Trent, are gone.
Right.
They've vanished.
Disappeared.
Right. And the aliens are being killed off by this like radioactive plague that was released by the humans as kind of a last-ditch effort to repel the invasion. And in an attempt to find a cure and to get the information from this hand computer thing, the Kaiban followed him back in time with the missing fingers.
And I love the fact that after they get the information from him, he grabs that groovy medallion that the Kaiban is wearing and basically rips it off of him, which rubber bands him back forwards 1,000 years into the future,
right? And
basically kills him. And he's not worried about it. Like,
right?
Whatever, dude.
Yeah. Well, eventually, Trent ends up defeating all of these Kaiban aliens by ripping off the medallion things that anchor him, and
he's finally able to give a galactic high five now.
Right, and he gets the 3 fingers back, so now he's got all the fingers. And this is one of the most awesome reveals, I think, just ever.
Oh, yeah.
The computer reveals to him that he's not a man, but he's a robot. And what has happened is the human survivors have been like digitally encoded onto this copper gold alloy wire. Right. They're like, it's like wrapped around the solenoid and all this stuff. And he's totally immune to disease. And he has to protect. He's basically the protector of humanity. Right. That is inside of him, and he has to protect them for like 1,200 years. Which at that point the plague will have dissipated and everything will be fine again. And he's basically has been charged with resurrecting the human race. But yeah, he had no idea. He totally thought he was, and it reminds me, that scene in Terminator Salvation when I don't remember his name, when Christian Bale reveals to the Terminator that, hey, dude, you're a Terminator. Yeah. No, I'm not. He has no clue. Anyway,
it's funny that you bring the Terminator up,
right?
Because that will show up again later.
Yes.
The Terminator does. You know what else it reminded me? It's funny that you said that. It reminded me of the last moments of Terminator 3, when they've gone through all of this stuff to get to the bunker, only to find out that there's no way to stop Judgment Day, and that they are just there to survive it.
Yeah.
Which is pretty much what happens to him. He just has to survive now for 1,200 years and then pop the people back out.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
So and one of the reasons my favorite episode is the reveal that he's not a man, that he's a robot. And a little tidbit about this episode is that most of the episodes was shot in the Bradbury Building, which was the same location used in Blade Runner to shoot those final scenes when Roy Batty and Harrison Ford Deckard are chasing each other around.
Yeah,
that old
never
Bradbury
seen that movie.
building.
Is it a good movie?
It's all right.
Yeah,
I guess.
I think I've heard of it. I thought it was about a guy who had a lawnmower service, but it's not. Right? He's a cop.
No, that's Lawnmower Man, I think.
Oh yeah, that's it. Okay, awesome.
Well, and another thing is that, and Harlan Ellison wrote this episode. Harlan Ellison, man. And he became really good friends with Robert Culp. And one of the reasons he became good friends was because he considered Robert Culp very intelligent.
Yeah.
And Harlan Ellison was kind of noted for thinking that most actors were just kind of dips.
Or most people too.
Yeah, pretty much everyone.
Have you ever actually met him?
No,
you meet him at a con or anything? We met him at a con once.
Oh, I would pass out. I wouldn't be able to get. Yeah.
Don't ever meet your heroes.
No.
That's all I'm going to say about that.
Well, and you're a Babylon 5 fan, right?
To a degree. I did watch it, but I couldn't do a Fave 5 for it without doing a lot of research on it. But I do know that he had his fingerprints all over that. Oh yeah, yep. In fact,
Straczynski wanted Harlan to write a sequel. He wanted him to write like a sequel to this episode as an episode for Babylon 5.
Holy crap!
Yeah, but they never did that because Harlan, I think, was worried that if it didn't happen, everybody would keep bugging him And what was he quoted? He was quoted as saying something.
Get off my lawn, you darn kids.
Yeah, if I ended up not doing it, everyone would just piss me off, and I'd have to come to their house and nail their head to the table or something like that. Typical Harlan fashion.
He's just.
I know. And there's also a lot of people confuse this episode with another episode that you're going to talk about, and talking about Terminator. I don't know if you want to talk about that now, if you want to wait until we get to your.
We'll get to the end. Let's get to the end.
Okay. So anyway, that's my number 3. That's my number.
That's a great number 3. Yeah. So I will counter your number 3 with my number 3, season 1, episode 19, called The Invisibles.
You do not know these men. You may have looked at them, but you did not see them. They are newspapers blowing down a gutter on a windy night. For reasons both sociological and psychological, these 3 have never joined or been invited to join society. They have never experienced love or friendship, or formed any lasting or constructive relationship. But today, at last, they will become a part of something. They will belong. They will come a little closer to their unrealistic dreams of power and glory. Today, finally, they will join I almost said the human race. And that would have been a half-truth. For the race they are joining today is only half human.
Now, this is an episode about a government agent who was sent to infiltrate a secret organization known as the Invisibles, which is made up of high-ranking government officials, of police, of all of this stuff. And their intention is to use these tiny alien parasites who, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say tiny, but they're small, who, for lack of a better term, look like either a big SETI Alpha 5 eel or a smaller tingler. And they put these on the backs of people, and you have to do these tests and stuff now. But anyway, sometimes if you're set, then it'll stick with you, and it kind of like takes over, and you allow it to do what it's going to do, or it kills you. And so Don Gordon he works for a secret, like an FBI, CIA type group. And so he's going to infiltrate the group. And once he gets through it, he's assigned to go for to go like work and convert another person. But what he doesn't know is that his person is actually already part of the Invisibles. And all along, they've been wanting to get an agent of his group turned into an Invisible. So it ends up that he's the one that they're actually hunting. Yeah. And so I like this episode. Richard Dawson plays a very small part. He's like a groundsman at the governor's. And the governor's played by Neil Hamilton from Batman 66. And anyways, it's a really cool episode. It's got all of this switchback in it because, you think you're going along this one way and that he's got everybody fooled. But then you find out that they've known about him all along and he's actually the target. So I really enjoyed it. It was written by Joseph Stefano and it was directed by Gerd Oswald. And again, it's got this really cool cameo from Richard Dawson. He's got a really thick accent. He doesn't have to Americanize it for anybody. So anyway, really enjoyed it. It's called The Invisibles from season 1. Never seen it though, I'm guessing.
No, I absolutely remember that episode.
Oh, you do? Oh, okay.
I'm kidding. I don't. Sorry.
Let me get this fish hook out of my mouth here. All right, so that brings us to your number 2, which is supposedly more favorite than your number 3.
Yes, and my number 2 is the.
Are you figuring it out right now? Are you figuring it out right now? Tell me the truth.
I have it right here. I'll email this to you. My number 2 is the 6th finger.
Oh, cool! With the guy from The Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep. Again, we kind of have a story about the guy who feels wronged and he's not very smart and it's in this Welsh mining town,
which I thought was a neat setting because almost everything you see is always some far-reaching planet or to the United States. So set it in a Welsh mining town,
Yeah. And we have this scientist who discovers this process that affects or speeds up the evolutionary process.
And you remember who he is, huh? Did you recognize him? Edward Mulhare?
Edward Mulhare, Mulhare.
Devin Miles from Knight Rider. He was the guy who was in charge of all of this stuff.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Holy crap. You got a way better memory than I do.
Well, when I'm watching these, because I did watch that one too, because it was on my short list, and it's just edged off. If I'd have probably had I don't mention 3, it would have been on there because I really enjoyed it. But I right away when I saw him, I was like, oh, dude, who is that? And I had to stop it and go look it up.
Oh, yeah. See, then like when my wife and I are watching something, literally the only words we ever speak to each other when we're watching something is, where have we seen that guy? Where have we seen that guy? And we'll have to pause it, whatever we're watching, and we're getting on there. Oh, that's right. That's constant.
And then you can move on.
Everything we watch. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But anyway.
Oh no.
Professor.
So anyway, we've got this professor, and he has this stuff that increases the evolutionary process, but he's guilty because he developed this super destructive atomic bomb, and he's hoping that this new discovery is going to end up bettering the human race.
Right.
And so we have this miner, David McCallum, the Man from U.N.C.L.E. guy. I'm trying to think of other things that he was in because he's been in a million things.
Yeah, but Man from U.N.C.L.E. says it all for me.
Right. Was he in? Well, and was it a movie or a series, The Invisible Man, back in the 70s?
You know what? A buddy of mine just told me about this on a recent podcast. Yes, it was a remake of the Invisible Man.
I think that was him. Anyway,
came in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he volunteers for this experiment, though, with the professor, and so he's basically sent forward like 20,000 years, evolutionary wise, and in the hopes that he will kind of gain the enhanced mental capabilities of human beings, that far in the future.
Right.
And we see him through this process of going forward, and his head gets bigger and bigger and bigger, because his brain is growing apparently. And at a certain point, he becomes in charge. He takes control of the experiment.
Right.
Because he is now way past the professor mentally.
Yeah. And he's got that 6th finger.
Exactly. And so now, at this point, it gets to the point where he's like a million years in the future, mental wise, with superior intelligence and all these powers like telekinesis. And he ends up trying to take vengeance on the mining town that he loathes because everyone was so mean to him. But he holds back, and he has now evolved past hatred or revenge or
love.
Even and the desire for power. He longs for when the mind will cast off the hamperings of the flesh and become all thought and no matter, a vortex of pure intelligence in space. And so he gets his girlfriend to operate the machine and push him even further. And what happens is that she reverses the process. Right.
Sorry, dear. I was just getting here.
But at the last second, she gets him back to his normal self. And but it was just too much, and he passes away. So, right? Doesn't he die at the end?
Yeah, he does. He succumbs to whatever the effects.
Right. It was just
jumping from 1 million years forward back to today would do that.
Yeah.
I know that when it happens to me, I can't even jump 50,000 years and, without having a bad backache after a while. Yeah. So, whew.
But this episode has one of my absolute favorite quotes of any TV show ever.
Oh, please drop it on us.
I always try to use this whenever I can, but it's just simply, your ignorance makes me ill and angry. I love that. And every once in a while on Twitter, I'll find a picture of him in that final, big giant bubblehead form, and I'll post that. And then it's also got another quote that I really like, and it goes, "Fear, conformity, immorality. These are heavy burdens. great drainers of creative energy. When we are drained of creative energy, we do not create. We procreate, but we do not create.
Oh, that's heavy, man.
And I really
That's
like
heavy.
that.
Yeah.
It's true.
So I saw this episode again, really, really enjoyed it. One of the first things that struck me was, and I don't know how random this was, but I could swear this place looked familiar. And during the research of it, I found out that a lot of the stock footage comes from that old like MGM movie, How Green Was My Valley.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's kind of weird how, because I've seen that movie maybe a couple of times, but it's not like anything great or anything. But just watching it, I was like, man, being that it's Welsh and it's out there, I knew it had to be something different.
Right.
But yeah, so. And then the other thing I read about this was, I thought about it as I was watching it, when they were going forward and backwards with the evolution, that how the evangelists' minds must have been blowing, in what was this, like 64. Right. Oh my God, he's not going to talk about Darwin, are they?
Right. Yeah.
And so I read somewhere in there that because this show was coming on ABC at the time, that the ABC censor actually removed a lot of stuff talking about evolution and Darwinism in the speech from the beginning.
Right.
So that they couldn't use it. And I think they had to go back and rewrite stuff, to kind of cover it and put it in. And also I found out that there was a lot of the stuff in it that people had things to say that they cut out. So there's like, so the girl who would bring the bread, either her husband or her brother-in-law was like a huge Bible thumper, and he had no legs and he was very abusive. And so there was supposed to be this whole back and forth thing about God's creation versus man's creation. Right. And they cut that out too. So anyway, yeah. So great choice, man. I really dig that one because that was a great episode. Almost made my list. So we've already kind of talked about my number 2, which was Demon with a Glass Hand. I don't have much more to add to it because you covered it very well. I do love the fact how they were able to film in the Bradbury building with an excuse of we've created an impenetrable bubble around this building that you cannot come in or out of. Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, I guess we don't have to build sets for anything else. We can just use it. And I also love the fact that the only thing it took for them to send them back in time was them to like rip that cool medallion off of each of them. And then they would like, whoop, and then they were gone, Yeah.
You would think there would be something a little more, what if they were running through the woods and a branch grabbed it, or
yeah, exactly. Or what if they showed up in New Orleans and Mardi Gras? Right. I mean, there's just so many things that could happen. One interesting thing I did want to note is that in the opening narration, which was done by Vic Perrin, they say, and I'm going to play it here.
Through all the legends of ancient peoples, Assyrian, Babylonian, Sumerican, Semitic, runs the saga of the eternal man.
As he's talking about throughout all the legends of ancient people, Assyrian, Babylonian, Sumerian, Semitic, that for some reason he says Samaritan instead of Samaritan. Oh. And all I could think of was, damn right, Samaritan. But anyway, really, really enjoyed that episode. So I think now we are ready for what is your penultimate numero uno favorite Outer Limits episode. And I'm ready for it. Your number 1.
My number 1 is The Man Who Was Never Born.
Here in the bright clustered loneliness of the billion stars, loneliness can be an exciting, voluntary thing, unlike the loneliness man suffers on Earth. Here, deep in the starry nowhere, a man can be as one with space and time, preoccupied, yet not indifferent, anxious, and yet at peace. His name is Joseph Reardon. He is, in this present year, 30 years old. This is the first time he has made this journey alone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not even on my list. What is that one about?
So basically we start out with this astronaut Joseph Reardon. He lands on Earth in he accidentally goes through a time vortex thing.
God, don't you hate when you do that?
Yeah, and it happens so often in these episodes.
It's like taking a left at Albuquerque, you know?
But yeah, he goes through a time thing, and he lands on Earth in the year 2148. And it's just a desolate wasteland. I mean, it's like a Star Trek original series episode of just the desert, you know? And he meets this guy called Andro. And Andro is this horribly mutated figure. Just his face is all sorts of messed up, and his hands are all sorts of messed up.
And this is Landau?
Correct. Yeah, okay. Landau plays Andro.
Gotcha. Okay.
And he's a survivor of this, big biological disaster brought on by this scientist named Bertram Cabot Jr. And basically, Bertram developed this viral symbiote thing from an interstellar microbe, and it basically ended up physically altering the human race and made it so that the humans couldn't reproduce anymore, and it just turned Earth into a barren wasteland.
What a jerk!
Yeah, and so Andro talks about how there's no hope for mankind to survive after he's like the last of his generation.
Okay,
and after he's gone, there's not going to be anybody. But the astronaut says, well, there's hope, and because I came through a time thing to get here, maybe we can get through a time thing to get back and change things so that this Bertram Cabot, so that none of that happens.
Right. Another Terminator thing.
Right, exactly. And so they're going through, they're going to head through the time vortex. But what happens is the astronaut kind of feels himself dying and then just vanishes. And I guess from going through the time thing twice in one day or something, but he is able to tell Andro to kill Abbott if he has no other way to stop him, in order to save. It's kind of like going back in time to kill Hitler.
Right.
Andro is able to, with his mind, he's able to project himself as a normal human. He kind of hypnotizes everybody to make him appear normal and human. So he starts looking for a way to stop this Cabot, this scientist's work. But what happened was Andro came back to Earth too early, and Bertram Cabot Jr. hasn't been born yet. But we have his mom and dad, Bertram Cabot Sr., and they're just getting ready to be married. So, but he is able to. He tries to convince Cabot that he shouldn't marry this woman.
And when that doesn't work, he gets him drunk and takes pictures of him with strippers,
right? Yeah, right? Exactly.
Yeah, I've seen that movie.
And basically, and what happens is that Andro himself ends up falling in love with the bride-to-be, with Noelle, and he comes up with a plan to shoot Cabot. But they're going to go ahead and get married, and he develops a plan to shoot Cabot during the wedding ceremony. And what happens is Andro hesitates, and him and Cabot end up getting into a fight, and he ends up appearing the way he really is.
Drops his defense down, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Or his projection, okay.
So he takes off running, and Noelle runs off after him. He ends up explaining his mission to her, and she confesses that she has also fallen in love with him.
Aww.
And she convinces him to take her to the future. Therefore,
she can't have a baby.
Exactly. Yeah. She's not going to marry Cabot, and she won't have little baby Cabot Jr. But unfortunately, the flow of time has been altered through Andro and Noelle's actions, and since Bertram Cabot Jr. was never born, the symbiote that made Andro's mutated existence possible never existed, meaning Andro was never born, and Andro disappears just as the ship arrives in 2148, leaving Noelle weeping and to face the future alone.
Wow, that's a good one. Well, it's pretty good, number one. I know it's your favorite, and I'm supposed to say that your favorite's yours, but my number one's better than your number one. I'm just going to say it.
From a certain point of view.
Yeah, from the correct point of view.
Okay.
No, in all seriousness, we've talked about this earlier. My number one is Soldier, the opening episode from season 2, which again is written by Harlan Ellison. Backing up, my number 2 and my number 1 are both Harlan Ellison episodes.
Yeah.
I would not have guessed this at all from the beginning. One episode that we didn't talk about is the Galaxy Being, which that's the one about the disc jockey who picks up the, I swear I thought that was going to be my number 1. But after you agreed to do this one, and I watched a bunch of episodes to get ready for this one, just to refresh my memory. Even though I loved it, man, number 1, when I watched Soldier, there was absolutely no doubt about it. First of all, you've got Michael Ansara as Quarlo Klobergen. And he's just so, the presence that he brought to that episode, for me, was just crazy. And I mean, watching this episode, it screams Terminator, the whole thing. Now, I know that's backwards, because this episode came out before Terminator. But watching it, all I could think about is, this is the Terminator. And so the episode is about 2 infantrymen, 1,800 years in the future, fighting each other on a battlefield. Each of the soldiers are wearing a helmet, and they have voices talking to them, telling them what to do.
Find your enemy. Attack. Kill. Attack. Kill. Attack. Kill.
Each of them has a helmet, and in each of them, they have someone speaking to them. Vic Perrin, the control voice of the Outer Limits, is one of them, and Tim O'Connor from Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, also playing another role in this episode as Paul Tannen. So the 2 soldiers are fighting each other, and as they come to basically meet in the middle to shoot it out, this lightning bolt / energy time weapon zaps them both up. And the Ansara character, who we'll call Quarlo, shows back up on a city street in 1964 and has no idea what's going on to him. There's no more voice in his head. And now you've got all the sounds of the city and the people, and it basically kind of drives him a little nuts. And the police show up, and he's basically can't even fight for himself. And so they pick him up. So he is being captured and interrogated, and all he will say is,
Quarlo, Klobergen, right. R-M-E-N-T-N-D-O.
Over and over and over again. In that Klingon voice that Ansara has. It's so cool. And eventually they bring in another guy who instantly hears from the cadence and from what he's wearing and whatnot, that it's basically he's giving his ranking for when he's captured. And he has been a soldier who's picked up. The professor says, you know what? His name's Tom Kagan. He says, he's just out of his element. And what you guys are doing here, you're never going to get anywhere out of it. So he starts working with him, basically teaching him English. And he realizes that the words that Quarlo has for things are bastardized English. And I think they're slowly starting to figure out, not only is this guy out of the area, he's out of his time. And Quarlo goes home with the family. So it's the professor, his daughter, his son, and his wife. And Quarlo starts to have an affection for them. And all during this time, we start seeing the other soldier who was like trapped in the vortex start to change. And then suddenly we know that he's coming. Well, Quarlo knows this too, and everybody's worried about him. But he takes off and breaks into I think it was a pawn shop, and steals a gun because they have his gun. But he is going to protect the Kagan family because that's his new family. And in the end, the other soldier shows up in an amazing scene. I mean, it's very, very much like the Terminator time bubble that pops up, because it takes like part of a wall out and some other stuff. And they end up in a fiery, climactic burn, sacrificing his love to kill the enemy and save the family. And it ends, and I'm just watching it going, holy crap, that was a good episode. And so then I start digging into it. First of all, I see that it's written by Harlan Ellison. And I knew that The Demon with the Glass Hand was going to be right around the top. So I'm thinking, oh, man, 2 episodes by him. And then I start reading about the fact that Ellison, after the Terminator movie was released and he watched it, he must have gone, hey, that's like Soldier. What the hell are you guys doing?
Right.
And so he sued them. And basically, Orion Pictures said, okay, it's not plagiarism, but I'll tell you what, we're going to write it off and we're going to pay you without going to court. And there'll always be an acknowledgement that says, acknowledgement to the works of Harlan Ellison. So I guess, he got paid and he got his name on the videotapes and every release after that. But an article from the LA Times, they asked James Cameron, and he was like, you know what? I can't talk about it, but if I could talk about it, I could be nothing but disagreeing with that. So obviously Cameron thought, whatever. But you cannot watch that movie and watch this episode and not see the correlation.
Oh, absolutely. Can I just tell you this is a very fitting number 1 episode. It's an amazing episode. It might not be the right episode for number 1, but that's okay.
It's not the right one for you because you're wrong. But if you were right, then it would be. God, how do I do this when I know you're wrong?
One of the things I find fascinating with stories like this, especially, because obviously the future they come from is this very apocalyptic Armageddon type of thing where it's just nothing but constant war.
Right.
And the evolution of the English language. And I say English language because we're Americans and we speak English. I don't know how other languages are going to evolve. But I'm always fascinated with how English, in a lot of really good post-apoc books do this. They kind of create this whole new way of speaking where it's like a puzzle, and you have to try to figure out what are they saying, how are they, and then once it clicks as to how it is, or how that language has evolved, it brings a whole new level to everything, and I just find that very, very cool. Also, did you ever see the movie Soldier with Kurt Russell?
Oh yeah,
isn't that like totally taken from this episode? It's even the title. Like it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, you've got this soldier who's just been this programmed soldier, and he's dumped on this planet, and he ends up befriending this family.
It's pretty much like once you take out his purpose of destruction, just like they did with Koro, you find that he is just as human as anybody else could be.
Sure.
Kurt Russell did an amazing job, how he bonds with the kid. And there's a lot to be said in this episode where Ansara is with the kids.
Going back to Demon with a Glass Hand for a minute, Harlan Ellison was quoted back in 2001 as saying that Terminator was not stolen, because it was thought that Terminator was stolen from Demon with a Glass Hand.
Oh yeah, I didn't feel that.
And so on a website, I guess a fan had asked if Terminator was stolen from Demon with a Glass Hand, but he said it was not stolen from Demon with a Glass Hand. It was a ripoff of my other Outer Limits script, Soldier.
Yeah. So you're wrong. They didn't rip it off from there. They ripped it off from here.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, man, there's so many good episodes from this series. I want to thank you for taking the time to go through them and honing out this list for me.
Well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. It was fun. Hey, I'm curious because we literally had one episode in common. Mm-hmm. One being my honorable mention, and then one being your incorrect number 1.
No, you mispronounced correct episode. But please go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you.
Is there? Have you? Because I've listened to all your episodes, but I haven't kept track of how many things that you and your guest are in agreement with. But is this episode the episode that has the least amount of commonality between the top 5?
I've actually had an episode that had no crossovers.
Oh, dang it! Oh, yeah. I was hoping we.
But otherwise, this is a contender for number 2. I'll do you one better than that. It was an episode with Phantom Dark Dave and Neil Fraser where we did the with the 90s episodes of slasher and horror films.
Yeah, that was just a few episodes ago.
Yeah. So we had 15 titles and no crossovers.
That's right.
And that was crazy. Like afterwards listening to it, how from only a 10-year period of horror movies, none of ours were the same.
Isn't that funny?
It was. But I really am glad that we did this, because even though you and I like a lot of the same things, it's interesting when we got onto this one that we chose all these different ones.
Right.
And, didn't have I'd be interested if we did a Twilight Zone one, how we would have crossover.
Because I've already got my top 5 and about 13 honorable mentions. So.
You sound like Dave again when we did musicals. He had his top 5 and 87 honorable mentions. Yeah, no kidding. No, but well, cool, man. This has been really, really great. I want to thank you for taking the time to be on it. I know it's a lot of work, but it's just been a joy to have this episode with you.
Oh, hey, you took your time out of your vacation to do this. This
is vacation for me, baby. This is vacation. So I'd also like to thank all of you out there in the podcast universe for joining Evan and I for this episode of Fave Five From Fans. We love putting out the show and will continue to release episodes every Friday. You can find us through the AOC Podcast Network, or you can subscribe to the show via Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Podbean, and really anywhere you can catch a podcast. Please review and give us a 5-star rating whenever you listen so that other people can hear about Fave 5 and we can continue to grow the show. We'd also love it if you'd interact with us on Twitter at Fave, the number 5 from Fans, on our shiny new website, www.fave5fromfans.com, on our Facebook page, and on the gram, as the kids are saying. We here at Fave 5 From Fans are excited to be part of the Slightly Irregular Podcast Network. You can find us on sipnet.us or on the aforementioned Instagram. The SIP Network is a varied group of podcasters like the Terrible Terror Podcast, the Podcast from Another World, Dead Hand Radio, the Paranormal Positivity, Angry Dad Podcast, the Back in Time,
From the Wastes,
and us, Fave 5 From Fans. Just remember, folks, it may not be the best, it may not be the most popular, but if it's your favorite, then it's good enough for us. Evan, say goodnight.
Take cover and take care.
That's pretty awesome, Evan. This is Hulk Boy from Hollywood, signing off.